Welcome to the Webb Report. I'm Stuart Webb, and today I wanted to discuss the Bill of Rights. Now, most of us have a general understanding or a general idea of what the Bill of Rights are, but do we know all the specifics of what is in each part of the Bill of Rights or each amendment? And the Bill of Rights is considered the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which they lay out very important rights that we have pertaining to natural law or obvious law or law that supersedes man. Things that that we have inherently, they're self-evident. And so I wanted to discuss, to go over these first 10 amendments. I've simplified them just for my own study and so that I can share them with others so that they have a better understanding and so that it's easier to digest the Bill of Rights into more plain English. And what I've come up with has really helped me. But the reason why I wanted to discuss these also is that, if you don't study something, you'll forget it. You won't retain it most of the time. And with something as important as the Bill of Rights, we need to know these things. We need to understand them because the Bill of Rights lay out our natural rights. Okay? Again, the U.S. Constitution is not perfect, but it is justified before God. And these rights were given to us by God. So the First Amendment contains 5 natural rights that we actually have. We have the right to freedom of religion, which means to worship God according to the dictates of our own conscience. The right to freedom of speech, to freely speak your mind and to express your opinion. The right to freedom of the press, to print and disseminate your thoughts, as I'm doing right now through this show. The right to peaceably assemble, to gather wherever and with whoever you may please, with whomever you please, and the right to petition your government for redress of grievances, which means you have the right to tell your government to right a wrong, to make just something that was unjust. And all of these rights, just in the First Amendment, there are 5 natural rights that we have. Okay? And all of these rights are being challenged right now. They have been attacked, and especially during the lockdowns. I mean, these were pretty much all violated, at least to one degree or the other. So that's just the First Amendment. Very important. The Second Amendment, right to bear arms, which means to defend yourself with weapons of all kinds, including firearms, okay? So you can defend yourself. And the right to form a militia when the government is not protecting the rights of the people. So when the government fails to defend your natural rights or to protect you, to protect your rights from being violated, your natural rights, then they're not doing their job. And that's really the purpose of government, is to make sure that everyone, all citizens' natural rights are being protected. And so that just tells us right there, not only can we defend ourselves, but when the government's not doing their job, we have the right to form a militia. Third Amendment, the right to not have soldiers quartered in your home. And that's basically a principle that extends to all people, and it's not limited to soldiers. So, you can't the government cannot force you to just house people in your own home or in your private property or in a place that you're paying, that you're renting, that you have a right to not have random people living in your house. I mean, that is just a natural, obvious, self-evident right. Fourth Amendment, also a very important one that's pretty pertinent nowadays. And a very, what should I say? It's very relevant to today. The right against unreasonable searches and seizures. So the government has to have a specific warrant signed by a judge on oath of affirmation of probable cause, and this is sometimes referred to generally as a right to privacy. So if the government wants to just come into your house or search your private things, they have to have just cause. They have to have a probable cause, and they have to have a warrant. I mean, they have to go through the channels of proving probable cause and all these things before they're able to just walk into your house and or even your car, right? They have to have, if they want to search your car, they have to have probable cause. I mean, I guess you could let them search your car if you voluntarily let them. That's within your rights to do that. But if they want to search your car, they have to have a warrant or probable cause, even when driving your car. Fifth Amendment, you have the right to life, liberty, and property, and due process of law. So you can't, no indefinite detention of anyone. A person must be charged with a crime, tried, and convicted of a crime if their life, liberty, or property are to be taken. Okay, so the right to life, liberty, and property, and due process of law. And also the right to not be put twice in jeopardy of life or limb for the same offense, okay? Also known as the right against double jeopardy. And then another right in the Fifth Amendment, right to not be a witness against yourself. So right against self-incrimination. Sorry. As you always hear that, in movies and shows, etc. I plead the Fifth. Okay, so that's included in the Fifth Amendment. Right to not be a witness against yourself. The Sixth Amendment, you have a right to a speedy public trial of impartial jury of your peers in a criminal setting. So that's very important. Again, this goes along with the Fifth Amendment as well. Due process and no indefinite detention. If the government wants to put you in jail, they have to charge you with something, and you have the right, the basic natural right to a speedy and public trial in front of a jury of your peers. They cannot just hold you indefinitely and forever and ever. I mean, that is completely wrong and immoral, and it's our natural right to have a trial and to be actually convicted of something before our property and our natural rights are taken to some degree. Also, you have the right, in the Sixth Amendment, you have the right to face your accuser and gather witnesses in your defense. So you have the right to make a defense. They can't just put you on trial and not allow you to face your accuser and to make a defense. You have that right. It's obvious and natural. You also have the right to counsel, to a lawyer, to counsel. So that's in the Sixth Amendment. Very important. Seventh Amendment. Now this similar to the Sixth Amendment, but for a civil setting. Right to a speedy public trial of impartial jury of your peers in a civil setting. So not a criminal matter, but a civil matter. You have the right to face your accusers and gather witnesses in your defense, and you have the right to counsel. So both settings, both criminal and civil, both covered. Eighth Amendment, right, you have the right against excessive fees and fines, and also the right against cruel and unusual punishments. The Ninth Amendment, which is, I think, probably overlooked, it is the right of the people, us, the citizens of this country, to retain natural rights not specifically granted to the people in the Constitution. That means listed rights of the federal and state government, or the state governments in the Constitution, shall not be construed or interpreted to deny natural rights retained by the people. So, unless it's explicitly granted to the federal government in the U.S. Constitution, then we retain that right. We retain things that are not listed or not explicitly granted to the federal government. That has been completely violated grossly violated, I would say. So that is something that we need to revisit and we need to restore. The 10th Amendment. The right of the states and the people to retain rights not granted to the United States in the Constitution, aka the federal government, is limited to the rights explicitly granted to it in the Constitution, and all others are retained by the states and the people. So hand in hand, the 9th Amendment and the 10th Amendment very clearly say that the people are really supposed to retain all the rights not explicitly granted to the federal government. And then in the 10th Amendment, it says all, again, if the federal government is not explicitly granted certain rights in the Constitution, that the states it falls back to the states. It's like the default, and the people of that state. Okay, so we need to restore that as well. There's definitely more states' rights movements in the last 10 years, I would say. That's a good thing. That is a check against big central government, and we need to continue to promote that. States' rights, very important. And also states' rights, you can nullify things that if a state government doesn't think that the feds have the right to do certain things and they're doing them anyway, that state can say, we're just not going to enforce that federal law, we're just going to disregard it, and we're going to nullify it. That's part of the power balance, the check, separation of powers. It's part of the check on the big central federal government from overreaching, which they have been doing for a long time. So those are the Bill of Rights, kind of simplified done in my understanding and simplified for me. And I feel like for the most part, it's a pretty good summary of the Bill of Rights, something that's easy to digest, easy to retain and remember. I need to be better about studying these things because they're very important, and we need to remember them. So I would encourage you all to study the Bill of Rights and study the Constitution, but the Bill of Rights are super important, and they kind of give you it sets the precedent for like why the Constitution is important. The principles, it reminds you of the principles as to why the U.S. Constitution is so important. The principles in it are good. They are just, and we need to retain them in our mind. We need to restore them if they've been infringed, and we need to promote them because that is the supreme law of the land. I want to leave you with the scripture. It is in Doctrine and Covenants. Let me pull it up real quick. Doctrine and Covenants, section 98, verse 4. And now, verily I say unto you concerning the laws of the land, it is my will that my people should observe to do all things whatsoever I command them. And the law of the land, which is constitutional, supporting that principle of freedom in maintaining rights and privileges, belongs to all mankind and is justifiable before me. Therefore, I, the Lord, justify you and your brethren of my church in befriending that law, which is the constitutional law of the land. So, God has said that the Constitution, the principles of it, if we understand them and take them seriously, they are justifiable before Him in maintaining the principles of freedom. And they're not just for our country. They're the principles of the Constitution that are found in the Constitution, natural rights, etc. Those things are to go to all mankind, not just the citizens of this nation. So very, very profound and important. We need to take this more seriously in understanding it. So July 4th is coming up, Independence Day. I kind of make that the month of studying these things more intently And so I'd encourage you to do the same. But I will leave it there. I'm going to be speaking a lot more about not just these kinds of things, but I'll be throwing in news articles and things like that, and books, snippets from books that I've been reading. But I am going to be discussing the Bill of Rights pretty often and incorporating them into my reports and in my segments. So I appreciate you listening, and that's going to do it for this segment.